This is a simple chart of how our quality of our attention, okay, and again, this is in the aggregate, but it's created by all the individuals, how the quality of our overall attention as a species will affect our world in accordance with the principle of correspondence, which states, as goes the microcosm or the microcosmic units, so will become the macrocosm. Okay? So over here, we have a pure information stream. This is good information. This is information that is capable, that resonates with truth, and is capable of helping to develop wisdom or right action within the being. This over here is the poisoned information stream like we get from the mainstream media, from scientism, from the New Age movement, from government indoctrination centers called schools, okay? This is the poisoned information stream. Now, everybody's going to take in some form of a mixture of both of these streams. What the goal needs to be is to purify. Just like, hey, you take in bad food, you're going to have bad health. You take in bad information, the output through behavior is going to be bad. So you got to purify. Meaning, if there's valves here on the individual buckets, these are called the individual people, okay? And they're all coming together with the quality of their water, right? What they're holding within their consciousness. And that's all going into the big pool called the world. Everybody's bringing their bucket to the pool, they're pouring it in, and then they're jumping in. And that's the world. That's the quality of the world, right? The quality of this whole thing here is going to be based on how much poisoned, polluted information was in your bucket compared to how much pure information was in your bucket. Okay? So there's valves over here. We got to shut this one off, this brown muddy valve over here, and we got to open this one up. Okay? If we do that, the world will be purified and we won't be creating self-inflicted suffering. We don't do that, we're going to be swimming in brown muck. Okay? And generating all kinds of problems for ourselves. So, how are we spending our time? What are we paying attention to? Is this what we're doing with our time and attention? Sitting behind the hypnosis box? Which means suppression of knowledge. Hypnosis is the suppression of knowledge or the suppression of spirit. Okay? Or are we going to devote our time to some pursuits of wisdom? Which means developing knowledge, converting it to understanding by processing it accurately, and then converting into wisdom through action, through right action. And, you know, you got to read to do this. People don't want to hear that either. Okay? Reading is required. The ancient Romans had two words, the same word, okay? They meant two different things in their language. The word was liber, L-I-B-E-R. Liber meant free, as in not a slave. A free being would be described as liber, free. It's the basis of the English word liberty, liberty, freedom, okay? They had the same word also meant a different concept. So the word liber didn't just mean free. If it was used in a different context, does anybody know what else the word liber meant, L-I-B-E-R, meant in Latin? Book. It meant book. Does that tell us something? They associated the Latin word for book also meant free in their language. Okay? And again, liber is the basis for the word library. Okay? Library. Okay? Where you can go to become free if you read the right books. You know? And again, the world is our library now. You know, we've reunited all the parts of the big library that were cast to the four corners of the earth. The mystery traditions are available at your fingertips now, which hasn't been the case at any time in human history. And what are we doing? We're playing Farmville on Facebook. You know? So we have to ask ourselves, what are we spending our spiritual currency on? And are we investing it wisely for a return of real money, which is actually spiritual enlightenment? I'm going to take a quick break right there, and we'll pick it up with the next section in 10 minutes. 10 minutes, right back here to continue. Thank you. So natural law has been called many different things in different traditions throughout the world at different times in history. Let's look at what some people have called it. It's been called the law of cause and effect, or the laws of cause and effect. And there's a scientific connotation to this concept of cause and effect too. Even scientists will say an effect invariably follows a cause. And they'll also say things like, for every action, there exists an equal and opposing reaction. So there's a consequence when an action is taken. In the more New Age circles, you've heard it referred to as the law or laws of attraction. Okay? I call this presentation the real law of attraction. So, however, there are some good things that the New Age community, and I don't tell you it's all bad, I don't make that blanket statement, okay? It is a religion in many respects, but however, there are some truths embedded in it that can be taken on their own and, value can be gleaned from. So one of those sayings is, the energy that we emit is the energy that we attract. This is true. What we're putting out into the universe is what we're getting in return from the universe and what we're creating in our reality. Energy flows where attention goes. I just talked about this in the last section. What we put our attention on is what ultimately gets manifested in the world. As you think, feel, and act, so you shall be. Some of the teachers of different variants of law of attraction teachings have only put the first part in that. As you think, so you will be. No. As you think, feel, and act, so you will be. And most of all, as you act, so you will be. Most of all. Okay? So it's been called karma. It's been called moral law, as I talked about before. And this is, captured beautifully by the phrase, what we sow, we reap. The seeds that you scatter, that's what's going to grow, and that's the fruit that you're going to harvest. So a very accurate way of looking at it. Again, it's been called consequentialism. That's another thing I could put into this chart. In other words, that there is free will, but there is no free will without consequence. That's called consequentialism. That would be another very accurate way of referring to natural law. And finally, the golden rule, it's been called. Okay? And it's been stated in the affirmative as, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. I find this much more powerfully stated in the negative, or what I call the apophatic variant. And we'll talk about what apophatic and apophasis means in a few moments. I think it would have been much less ambiguous, the golden rule, if it was said like this. Do not do to others as you would prefer not to have done unto you. Now the ambiguity goes away because people want to be treated slightly differently. Hey, a masochist might want to get beaten by a sadist. Okay? But that doesn't mean, do that to others because you like it. But people know what they don't want. They don't want their rights taken. They don't want their property taken or damaged. They don't want to be harmed in their person. They don't want any of those things. They don't want to be lied to. They don't want to be deceived. So don't do those things to other people. So let's jump into this is the heart of the presentation here. It's how natural law actually works in our lives. What are its expressions? How can we come to understand how this operates? There are ways of knowing, and they're through these expressions of natural law. So we defined what natural law is. We talked about the underlying principles that it's based upon. Now we are going to talk about how it works in our lives, okay? So we're going to build a chart of the natural law expressions in a moment. What these expressions are the recognizable workings in our life. And they take place through 5 basic expressions. Each of the 5 expressions of natural law have a positive aspect and a negative aspect. So that gives us a total of 10 overall natural law expressions. And we're going to build a chart regarding these expressions. Okay? So here's the expression, and then there's a positive aspect to the expression, and there's a negative aspect to the expression. The first expression of natural law is known as, and again, this is what I call these things. There's no hard and fast rules. It's just terminology. It's jargon to try to explain them in words. Okay? These are unseen concepts and laws in reality, in nature, in the nature of the universe. Okay, these are just English word terms that I'm applying to these concepts, okay? So the first principle of natural law I call the generative polarity. Or in other words, this is the force or energy that we are using at the base level to start the process of creation. Or you could say of co-creation. Okay? We're co-creating the reality that we experience with the laws of nature. So you could look at the first first expression of natural law, which is the generative polarity, as the force that we use to set all of the other events which are to come, which are to manifest in our lives, into motion. Or in other words, what we use, the force that we use to generate or create the quality of our experience. That's the generative polarity. The positive expression of the generative polarity is love. Now, this is not what many people think of as love, okay? It's not familial love. It's not relationship love. It's not Hollywood movie variant of love. It's not romance novel variant of love, okay? I call love consciousness. Love is the force which helps us to expand consciousness and become open to truth if we are in it. If we are in that vibratory energy, we become open to truth. All right? So here's what it looks like visually. I try to put a visual aspect to all of these concepts, okay? And people would think I'm going to put two people together kissing or hugging or something like that, okay? Love is inside each individual if it's present, okay? It doesn't depend on any other person. You can express love with another person, and there's no problem with that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a great thing if it's present in your life. The capital L, capital O, capital V, capital E definition of love that I'm giving here is not that. It is this force that opens up our consciousness. It's the flowering expression of consciousness, okay? So how I word this is the positive aspect of the generative polarity, the first expression of natural law, is love. In regard to natural law, love should be seen as the expansive force for consciousness. It is the force which helps us to become open to truth and expand our awareness. That's the connotation that I'm giving for the concept called love here. Okay, that's the positive expression of the creative polarity. Now, the negative expression of the creative polarity is the exact opposite of love. So people will automatically think, well, that's hate. And it is not. Because the thing that puts consciousness in a box and prevents it from growing and keeps it where it's at is what? Fear. There it is. Fear. Fear is the basis for unconsciousness. You cannot be unconscious of anything in particular unless you fear it. Okay, that's what shuts consciousness down. And here's my visual for it. Fear. I don't want to look at that. That's too horrible for me to contemplate. That can't be true. I don't want that to be true. That's all fear. Okay? The negative aspect of the generative polarity is fear. Fear is the contractive force for consciousness. Fear is the force which influences us to become closed to the truth, and it is the force which ultimately shuts down our awareness. That's why so many people are unconscious, because they are fearful. They are fearful of the responsibility that comes with knowledge, and most of all, they are fearful of having to act based upon knowledge, because that requires courage. The second natural law expression is the initiating expression, what I call the initiating expression, just my term for it, okay? The initiating expression is the first stage of tangible and recognizable results which we produce in our lives after we have, quote unquote, set the ball rolling, okay? Set the dynamic in motion by choosing between the generative polarities of either love or fear. All right? So, we choose love, and something starts to happen. We become open to truth, right? Well, love is the expansive force for consciousness that opens our minds to the truth and awareness. So what do we gain as a result of accepting or existing in the vibratory energy called love? We gain knowledge, which is the acceptance of truth. Since love opens us up to truth, knowledge is its reception. It is the receiving of truth. We come to know. Okay? So that's how it starts. I call this the initiating expression. Now, of course, there's a negative initiating expression if we are existing in the vibratory dynamic of fear. That would be the opposite of knowledge. What is it? Ignorance. Right. Okay, now, this is what I put forward as knowledge. This is my imagery for knowledge. Okay? That's a being who knows themselves. And as the mystery traditions of Greece put forward at the Delphic oracle, know the self and you will know the universe. In other words, know the microcosm and you will know the macrocosm. Know thyself. The positive aspect of this initiating expression is knowledge or the acceptance of truth. Knowledge positively influences the quality of our lives because it positively influences our decision-making processes that lead to understanding in every area of our lives. You want to know how something works and ultimately create something good? You have to have knowledge. You want to know how a car works? Keep it running in good order? You have to have knowledge. You want to know how a computer works? Keep it running in good order? You have to have knowledge. You want to know how the human psyche works and keep it running in good order so that conditions on earth manifest the way you want them to manifest? You got to have knowledge. Not getting out of this condition without learning. Learning is the key. It's the answer. Knowledge is the answer. And people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear it. They want to think we're magically going to manifest the desired conditions that we say we want without learning a thing. It doesn't work that way. So again, the negative initiating expression is ignorance. Ignorance is the refusal of truth. It is the refusal to gain knowledge. Okay? Because we are in fear. So here's what I put as the image for ignorance. The population that is hypnotized, that wants to keep paying attention to nonsense and trivialities, feed themselves tons of GMO food that is crap for the physiology, Pay attention to distraction, entertainment, mainstream news and media, It's all there to just shut the consciousness down and keep people in a depressed psychological state and keep them in a state of psychological infancy. The negative aspect of the initiating expression of natural law is ignorance, or the refusal of truth. Ignorance negatively influences the quality of our lives because it negatively influences these decision-making processes that lead to understanding in every area of our lives. If you're ignorant about how anything works, you can't create the desired condition. It's just not possible. It's important to remember, again, that ignorance should be distinguished from nescience, which means not knowing because necessary information is not present or was unattainable. Ignorance, on the other hand, means not knowing even though necessary information is present because that information has been willfully refused or disregarded. And again, to keep us in ignorance, they don't need to hide the information anymore because it's not hidden anymore. It's out. And once again, it's available at your fingertips for free if you have the desire to take it in. But now, the manipulation mechanism that is used is dissuade people from looking at it. Provide endless entertainment, provide endless amusement, provide endless distraction, and say there's nothing to any of that stuff. That's just some old crazy religion that you don't need to understand. It's no different than any other religion, believing that natural law exists. Okay? That's what people will insist on telling you. So people will be dissuaded from ever looking into it, and they'll disregard it of their own choice. Thomas Jefferson said that if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Freedom and ignorance are antitheses of each other that can never coexist simultaneously. That is an impossibility in natural law. I'm going to put up a couple other quotes on ignorance. Samuel Adams said, "No people will tamely surrender their liberties, nor can any be easily subdued. When knowledge is diffused," that means it's everywhere present, "and virtue is preserved," meaning morality. On the contrary, when people are universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, meaning purely selfish and only worried about themselves, they will sink under their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders, meaning the society will turn inward on itself and collapse and destroy itself just based on the fact alone that the population is ignorant and they are ensconced in moral relativism and other forms of debauchery and just self-pleasure as their highest virtue, their highest desire. Socrates said that the only good is knowledge and the only evil is ignorance. And this is a quote I'd like to be remembered for. "Willful ignorance in the presence of knowledge is the measure of a bad person." And people will say that's extremely harsh. That's true. That doesn't make the statement untrue. The statement is true as well. It is a harsh statement. See, people in my family will ask me, why don't you have anything to do with me anymore? I've deliberately cut off many members of my own family. Okay? Because many members of my own family say, I know what's going on and I don't care. I don't intend to do a damn thing about it. I'm worried about me, myself, and mine, and I don't care what's happening in the world. Well, you know what that's called, folks? That's called a bad person. Let's not mince words. Let's not euphemize. Let's call it what it is. That's called a bad person. And I don't want anything to do with bad people in my personal life. I don't hang out with bad people. I try to surround myself with good people who care. Because they're co-creating wisely. Okay? I tell family members who I've cut off association with, because you do not care is what makes you a bad person. I don't want anything to do with you until you start caring about what's going on in the world. Then we could talk again. And I'll welcome you back with open arms and forgive you. But not until. You want to stay in that level of consciousness? I want nothing to do with you. I don't want to be around people like that. They're bad influences, and they do bring other people down. So I'll still put out the information. It's there any time for free that they want to go and engage it. And I tell them all, anytime you want to ask me and come over and engage directly with me, I'll make the time for you. But until you want to do that, until you develop that desire, I don't want to be in your presence. Okay? So maybe, I don't know if that's going to be effective. I don't know. And guess what? I don't care whether it's going to be effective, because I'm not going to surround myself with bad people until they decide I want to make myself a better person. Then I'll engage them and speak the truth to them. But until then, I'll put this out there for all for free, and they can engage it any time they want. But in my personal life, I can't make time for that. I don't have energy for that. I barely have energy for this. An anonymous quote, I believe this was from some internet forum. I don't know what the gentleman's name was, but it was a great quote. Ignorance is the root cause of all evil. And since only knowledge eradicates ignorance, it is our duty and moral obligation, there's that term, to educate ourselves as well as the masses around us. That's a moral obligation if you're in a position of knowledge. And once again, that's why I do what I do. I don't do it because I like people. Believe me, Barb will tell you how much I like people. I don't do it to make friends. I don't do it to make money. I do it because it's a moral obligation and for no other reason. I don't serve people. I serve truth. Truth is the force which I serve. And I bend the knee to no other. That's it. That's it. So great quote on ignorance there. Great few quotes on ignorance.